Hi, my name is Tejaswi. I'm a partner solution architect here at AWS. Joining me, we have Ryan Nix. Ryan, say hi.
Hi, my name's Ryan. I'm a partner solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. I focus on application platforms, application modernization, and hybrid solutions.
So in this video, we're going to talk about the migration options from ROSA Classic to Hosted Control Planes. So Ryan, we know that for existing customers, there is no in-place upgrade to Hosted Control Planes. So for customers who would want to switch from ROSA Classic to ROSA Hosted Control Plane, what is the procedure? What are the different options we have?
Okay, cool. ROSA Classic. This is customers who have already provisioned a Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS ROSA environment, and they've deployed ROSA Classic. This is where everything inside OpenShift exists in the customer's account, and they want to transition to hosted control planes where the control plane lives in a service account and only the compute layer exists in the customer account. Bring OpenShift in line with things like EKS as an example. So ROSA Classic over here, because there is no way to do an in-place upgrade or a conversion of ROSA Classic, the customer is going to have to deploy a new ROSA cluster, and this is going to be a hosted control plane cluster. Immediately what they're going to have to do is take the configuration of the cluster, the application workloads, and they're going to have to massage that into the new environment.
Right. So how do we do the upgrade here? Like, what is the first option we have? Is manually the only option, or how are we?
Okay, so manual is absolutely an option. It's not my favorite option, but it will work. So for customers who've got resources that are available, if you've got a couple of developers or an OpenShift admin that is not busy focusing on something strategic to the business and they need to get this done, I have seen customers with a relatively small number of workloads sort of redo the configuration. They manually did it here on the original implementation, and they can replay that over there. Manual re-interaction of that. I don't like manual for three reasons. One, it doesn't scale. If you're a customer of thousands and thousands of applications and hundreds of projects, this would take you forever. So it doesn't work well there. The second reason I'm not a fan of manual processes, it opens the doors into error-prone configurations. Mistakes slip in, and you could end up with something different between these environments, and that could be a breaking action. The third reason, and I'm not a huge fan of it, is people are an incredibly valuable resource. As a business owner, I would rather have my staff focusing on something that drives the larger business objectives as opposed to doing something like this. So it works. There are some caveats. I would look for something a little bit more automated.
Right. I think, as you said, it's a lot of effort. And is there any automated process for this?
There's a couple of potential options, and I would work backwards from what automation a customer already has in place. So depending how far along my customer is with their modernization journey, if they have OpenShift in the picture, they probably are at least entertaining a more modern approach to things. And something that could come up is a CI/CD process. And if they have invested in this CI/CD process, they've probably got a build pipeline, they've probably got an automation pipeline, and I would have a look at what's already in place. They could have much of their application definitions, they could have all of their OpenShift secrets, they could have all of the configurations, mappings, a large portion of the storage in terms of the persistent volume claims could already be defined as part of their CI/CD. And if it is, potentially they could just update the target endpoint instead of pushing the pipeline processes to their classic environment, update it to point to the hosted control plane and literally use that CI/CD to push in their applications.
Okay.
OpenShift configurations, if the customer's doing things like GitOps, maybe CI/CD is already in the picture there. Other customers might be entertaining something like Ansible automation, where there are Ansible playbooks that they're using for their post-deployment configurations, especially if they're automating the build out of OpenShift environments. And if they've got these building blocks in here, you could get a large portion of this configuration just redone there.
Okay, so what about customers who has got Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management for managing OpenShift fleets?
So Rackham or Advanced Cluster Manager is a really good option, but before I get there, I just want to point out one caveat over here with things like the CI/CD and the Ansible process. Those don't typically deal with storage. So if you're looking at stateful application workloads where there's a lot of storage attached to the OpenShift environment, the customer may have to solve how do I move that storage across. So Advanced Cluster Manager is an add-on product from Red Hat. It is going to typically be installed as an operator onto one of my OpenShift clusters. Then I register all of my other OpenShift clusters with Rackham. And what it creates is a overarching administrative layer or visibility layer over here. So let's just go and pop in Red Hat's Advanced Cluster Manager. So my Rackham environment is able to firstly provide a visibility layer across a fleet of OpenShift environments. I can use it to manage the configuration of OpenShift. I can also use it to manage the applications. So I could use it to deploy the applications and in some cases migrate the related storage. So if the customer is already utilizing Red Hat Advanced Cluster Manager or they are considering implementing it, it's something I would take advantage of. There's a tiny caveat here again. Rackham is not directly part of OpenShift. It is an add-on service or feature. So you're going to buy it from Red Hat, implement it into the environment. So there is a cost associated with it. If the customer is using it for a more holistic hybrid management of OpenShift, great. If not, they probably don't already have it, and maybe something else is going to crop into the picture. Let's go and add Red Hat's Advanced Cluster Manager. Quite frankly, if you are managing, my customers are not running one OpenShift environment. They've got a non-prod, a prod. They've maybe got non-prod in multiple AWS regions. They've got non-prod on premises. They might have production in multiple AWS regions. It is very common for my customers to have multiple OpenShift clusters spanning a very hybrid use case. Red Hat's Advanced Cluster Manager is a great way to get visibility across that entire hybrid architecture. So something I would encourage customers to consider.
Great. So what is the fourth thing we're talking about? The migration toolkit for containers?
Okay, so this is it's a spin-off of Red Hat's upstream project called Conveyor. So Conveyor has multiple different upstream projects. What Red Hat has done is they've taken that and they've bundled those into a toolkit that's free, and it is the Migration Toolkit for containers. Now, the Migration Toolkit, you download it, you can get detailed instructions on how to do this on the OpenShift documentation. So if you go to OpenShift documentation, scroll down the left-hand side, you'll find migration information. And what we've got the ability to do is actually go and deploy the Migration Toolkit for containers on my source cluster. And I can then go and install the Migration Toolkit for containers on my destination cluster. It's going to require an intermediary storage place to store things. It can read and write directly across from source to destination, but let's say you want to do almost like a backup and restore process. On AWS, I would encourage utilizing S3 as that intermediary storage environment. Once they're installed and configured, you can actually go and configure the Migration Toolkit to inspect the source. So it'll have a look at every single project that's running on here. It'll have a look at every application workload in that project, all of the interdependencies, the secrets. It'll have a look at the configuration mappings. It'll have a look at the persistent volume claims, and it will back up all that configuration, essentially exporting it out of my source, and then what it will do is it'll bring it back in into my OpenShift environment over there. So this does applications configure, cluster configuration. It does the persistent volume claims. If you are utilizing one of the CSIs, or if you're using an operator that is able to dynamically provision storage through OpenShift. So if you're doing something like I'm dynamically provisioning EBS volumes through OpenShift, it can replay that configuration over there. I'd say the migration toolkit is probably one of the more holistic approaches over here. And again, it's a free tool that you can get from Red Hat and install as an operator. So if you go into the operator hub inside ROSA and you just type in the word migration, you will find that migration toolkit and you can install it on both. It's going to require a credential that can interact with the source and the destination cluster. So you'll see that set up over here. Okay. And this is well documented. Okay. For a once-off move, migration toolkit for containers, great idea. Mm-hmm. For long-term ongoing maintenance of a fleet of clusters, mm-hmm. I would definitely bring the Red Hat Advanced Cluster Manager into that perspective. Mm-hmm. For a truly modernized application approach and way of managing your business, I think things like CI/CD processes, Git, Ops, Ansible, automation are tangible building blocks. And I think it all comes down to how quickly do you want to do this? Do you want to get from here to there in the shortest possible time, or do you want to build out a modernized approach? And I think those are some of the options that are immediately available. The final one loops back to manual. We have a very rich partner ecosystem where customers can take advantage of a Red Hat or an AWS partner mm-hmm. that can come in and actually help them through this. Whether that's Red Hat Consulting Services, whether that's IBM Consulting Services, there are a myriad of partners out there that are specializing in migrations and specializing in OpenShift that customers can bring in to help augment, their resources.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for explaining us the different deployment options over here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.